Alright, so the topic I got was, if you guys can see, it's like quite a lot of things together. So I just named it fatherhood, abuse, other elements to abuse to it, and then the impact of fatherless kids, right? How does that affect kids? How does it look like? What would it look like? And why is it important to actually look at these topics? So I try to cram that up. Normally I have half a day, not a full day, training on what I'm going to summarize on. I believe that everything that you do, you need to first understand what is the root cause. Because if you understand the root cause, and if you can fix the root cause, then everything else that blossoms from there becomes better. It's pointless to treat a tree, an apple on a tree, if you can't get fertilizer for the tree, for example, right? So the importance of parenting. Before we look at the father or the mother alone, what is the importance of parenting? When a child grows up and they have two guardians or parents, it gives them a sense of stability, right? For those who grew up in households where you have two parents or guardians, depending on who raised you, it just gives you a sense of stability, a sense of safe haven. Because, you know, if I can't get this from my dad, I might, you know, twist my mom's arm and actually get it. So a child gets to know which parent plays what role in their life. And in that also, a child gets to learn about self-regulation, right? If I'm screaming and dad is coming, mom is going to say dad is coming, I need to check my emotions, right? So it's a way of self-regulation. Or if a child is crying and they know that their dad is hard with them, they know that maybe their mom is the soft one, then they know that I can go to my mom to actually get a soothing shoulder. Again, a sense of self-regulation of emotions. There's a sense of safety at the end of the day, right? So a child picks up these things because we are their role models. They learn about emotion control. They learn about anger and everything from the people that they grew up around, which is their role models, and that would be parents. Okay? Now, because we're looking at the father's role, next slide. The role that I picked out were three, which is a father is supposed to be a protector, societal rules. A father is supposed to be a protector, the strong one, and again, which is a little bit of a bias side because it's more about the physical side, right? They are the protector. They will protect you from any danger. If you are in physical harm, they are their shield to that, right? And then when it's the emotion, it's the mother. So protector, provider, and also a role model, how to behave, how to stand up for your family, how to be there for your siblings. They show you that, right? Whereas the mom is more seen as the soft touch, right? So this is the role. So if you take a protector, provider, role model out of the picture, and you have the one which is seen as the softer, gentler side, and this is missing. And this becomes an issue in a child's life in various ways. Now, I'm going to quickly read a poem to you, next slide, which might speak to some of the things that we see with kids growing up. Because I Ain't Got a Pencil by Joshua T. Dickerson. I woke myself up because we ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket because I ain't washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark because the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready because my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then we get to class, the teacher passed because I ain't got a pencil. Quickly, Pity banging on what she said, you need to always ask what happened to you, not what's wrong with you. The way you speak to a child, you don't know what this child has gone through. So this tells you about a child who's raising themselves and a sibling. Could be the mother is around, or the mother is working double shift, or maybe they're a nurse, they're at work, and this child has to raise themselves, and the other parent isn't around. Half the time, when you read this, you would think this child is with the mother, or the mother is not there. We hardly think about the dad. For example, if a child is running in the street, chasing a ball, and you break the car, that is against the mom. Do we not always say that? Which is such a problem because we as society have unconsciously accepted that kids are just raised by moms. Sad, but that's just what we think about. We take away the role of the protector and blame the softer parent, which is the mom, and then it's easy to criticize her because if you tackle on the dad, it's like, you're the moms, you're the ones who carry, so you have that responsibility to continue carrying that burden. That's basically what we're trying to say. society, we are adding on to the issues to the mothers, and we do have single parents, single fathers as well. But we are much harder on the single moms and less critical on the dads that are not around. Now, I want to talk to you about trauma. Already this child is going through a traumatic experience by raising themselves because they don't have time to grow as a child. They have to raise their siblings. They have to just be an adult quicker than they need to be. So they would be sitting in class, the teachers. You would have a child in class sitting there. They are falling asleep because they had to be up so early, or they've been worried about their parent who came in late last night, drunk and so forth, or their parents are fighting every day. And this is a traumatic experience for this child already. So trauma, the next slide. Trauma looks at 3 E's, which I like, or at least I like this definition. Trauma looks at an event that is experienced by a person and has a lasting effect, right? So that I'm quickly taking the underlying word. So individual trauma results from an event or series of events or sets of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, right? And that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. You're driving a car and you get into a car accident. There's 2 of you in the car, right? Both of you survive. Maybe you were the one driving. Your experience, right? The event is the car accident. The experience that you have is, oh my goodness, thank God for the seatbelt, I survived. Never driving a car without a seatbelt, right? The person next to you might be like, oh, thank God I have my seatbelt on, but I'm never driving a car because my experiences are almost so death. Same event, different experiences. One will continue driving and respect seatbelts. The other one's like, I respect seatbelts, but I'm never driving. I would rather take a donkey cart or a bicycle or something, but I don't want to drive because the experience of that was traumatic and my outlook now is different, right? So trauma is something that happens to you. And for kids, because they are so young and they're still trying to regulate and find themselves, it becomes a permanent blueprint almost in their brain of how they see life, okay? Now I'll talk about ACEs, which is, you should know ACEs, Advanced Childhood Experiences. Adverse childhood experiences, something that has a lasting, right? So car accident happens when you're 12, for example. Adverse, it means all the way until the day you die, right? Childhood, so there are experiences in our childhood that has lasting effects in how we see life, right? For example, if a child was raped at 6 or 7, right? They might never ever trust men, ever, right? Or anybody else because they are protectors when they are the people that actually hurt them. So their outlook in life, their adverse outlook in life is traumatized based on safety and protection and physical touch. So if anybody touches them, it freaks them out because they don't trust, right? So, and experiences, obviously, like I explained how the experience shapes your outlook into life, okay? So ACEs was a study done by Kaiser. There's always confusion with the dates. I always thought it was in the 1970s, and I see now it's like 95 to 1997. There was a study done over, I think, 170,000 people. Mostly they were white people. And one of the things, so it was a clinic for obese women, right? Like very obese. So the clinic was to help them with diet and exercising and all of this. But some women would successfully lose weight, but then they will come back gaining more weight. And then one of the questions that the psychologist asked by accident, because he was tired, was, so when was the first time you had sex? And this lady said, I was 4. And then he's like, oh, so when was the last time you wanted to have sex? And she said, I was 19. She's like, wait, but what happened when you were 4? Oh yeah, my uncle raped me. And so this became a standard question of when did you have sex and when did you want to have sex? 2 different things, right? So then they discovered that a lot of the women in this obese clinic were raped before they were like 8 or 9. And what happens is every time they lose weight and they look cute and okay, and somebody says, oh my gosh, you look yummy. Then it's like it's a trigger, they are re-traumatized. So what they do is they will just eat a lot to gain weight so that they are not attractive, so that they don't have to re-experience this traumatic effect of being raped at this young age. Adverse experience at a life and how you perceive life. Trust everybody. Please continue. So what ACEs, so that was one experience that I gave you, which is rape, right? So the study looked at 10 different things, and one of them is a child growing up in a divorce home, and half the time the kids end up with their mothers. It's one of the ACEs that they looked at. Being physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused, emotional neglect. Guys, I can do a half-day workshop on neglect alone. Neglect is such a painful, traumatic experience for a child, even us as adults, that it shapes how you become attached or unattached to people. We have attachment disorders in psychology where people get easily attached, or they also maybe fear because of neglect. You know, when a child is crying, it's like, just leave the baby, they will be quiet. This shapes the child's brain that if I cry, somebody doesn't come or somebody comes. So it's not, you need to be careful how you treat a child, because a cry for help and there's no help teaches them that it doesn't matter how much pain or hurt or whatever you feel, there's nobody. That is neglect. This is what the child's brain is forming. And then you get a child then who becomes very withdrawn, or a child who's super hyperactive, who's looking for attention here and there because they need something, right? So our traditional parenting might not always be the best. There are some that is okay, but we need to be careful as to what are you help shaping the child if you're not careful with how you're treating them. So parental separation, like I said, in divorce is quite big. So if a child grows up with parents together and then they split up, their base, it's like having a rug pulled under your feet. You lose balance. Who do I go stay with? My parents hate each other, but I still love them, right? My parents can't stand each other, but I still love them. If I'm with the one parent, the other parent feels neglected. Now I feel like I'm betraying this other parent. We need to, as adults, realize that if you can't stand to be with your spouse, you need to change how you speak to your child. So let's say I have a child and then I'm divorced with his father, and I'm like, this is just behavior like your family's side, your father's side. Already, they're going to try and defend their dad, but they can't defend their dad towards me because they love me and their father. And this puts them in an awkward position where they may or may not even decide to be in a serious relationship or committed relationship because they don't want to ever feel that, nor do they want their kids to feel that eventually. ACEs, it's quite important to know what ACEs are and how it shapes and affects our lives at the end of the day. So when you speak to a child or any adult, sometimes when someone is coming to you from an angry space, it's more about the emotions than how they're talking to you. It's like, what happened to you? Why are you so angry? I didn't do this, what's happening? If you can't ask that, it's okay, because they might not always know that there's a lot of baggage that I'm actually carrying that's making me be this way. To take space out and like, this person isn't angry at me, but they need to vent out, and right now I'm that person, and not to take offense. And then later to come back like, I apologize, but I didn't realize that I pissed you off that much. Is there more to this than what meets there? Because I don't know why you're so angry. Non-violent communication, basically what she's been saying. So we need to realize there's not always a lot, and everybody has a traumatic experience. All of us, if I were to ask you, what was that painful thing that happened in your life? You will remind me, right? If I ask you who's your favorite teacher growing up in primary school, you will tell me, and it's not because you like their subject, it's because they looked at you and they could cuddle you or they gave you compliments. Anybody? ACEs. So it's about how we speak to kids, how we approach kids. Touch is very important to kids if they allow you, okay? I said I'm going to wrap through this because of time. Next slide. One of the things is having a member in prison for a child is very traumatic, because 1 minute they are with their uncle or auntie, the next minute this person has committed a crime and they're in prison. Society is backlashing their family, and they have to be there to listen to the criticism because they can't do anything. And so it becomes a traumatic event, because now I don't trust. The 1 minute society is okay with the family, the next this person is ripped away from us, despite what they did, because the child still loves this person, right? So it's also a traumatic event for a child. So the lifelong consequences. So if you have ACEs happening, let's say, to a child by the age of 4, it's disrupted neurodevelopment. Remember when I said that a child has to learn about self-regulation, and they learn that from the parents? If the parents are the ones causing anxiety and stress and trauma, fighting, stabbing each other, even seeing rape, this child doesn't know how to act because they are forever in a panic state. Nah? Look at it like this. If you were to cross a street and there's a truck coming, nah, and it honks at you like beep, nah, you freak out, right? And if you're standing there, you might actually jump out of the way. Some people might freeze. I'm a freezer, I freeze. If you have 3 trucks coming at the same time at you, boom, 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 you freeze. And you ask that child, where is your pencil? This is where their brain is, because this is what's happening in their mind every time they're at home, trying to regulate, trying to make things happen. And you will see, if a child is growing up in an abusive home, they try and fix the adult problems so that they don't fight. And this very same child is the same child that you want to go to school to pass. Already in neurodevelopment, they don't know how to be in class. They can't even count 1, 2, 3 because they have adult issues that they're trying to fix, right? Then we have social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. How would we expect this child to have friends when they have adult issues going on? How do we expect this kid to have cognitive development when they are always in a panic state of mind? This is where we see a lot of kids failing, a lot of kids having, some of the disorders are also misdiagnosed, I should say, ADHD and bipolar sometimes, because they interlap with a lot with ACEs, and it's because we don't do enough sessions and we don't sit enough with the kids to fully understand. But there's more to the story than just what meets the eye, like, oh, the D and the B is different. Maybe it's because they have so much going on that they can't even they don't realize that's what's happening. So I feel like society, again, like I had mentioned earlier, trauma-informed care is quite important because we need to ask the question, what's happening? Do you need time out? What would help look like for you? What are you going through? But in a way which is age appropriate where the child is at, so that we can see how we can best rectify or help a child. And or now. Okay.
One question while we are on basis that how can they address childhood experience linked to gender-based violence?
If you let me finish. Okay. All right. Yeah, so that was the third one, social, emotional, cognitive. To her question, adoption of high-risk behavior, to her question. Because you're trying to survive, you're on survival mode. Anything or anybody that comes at you, you might react violently. So these kids even grow up looking, okay, how many of you, if you were to really think back, if you had a great dad or a great mommy, the person that you are with right now kind of reminds you of that parent? Okay, I see smiles. So if you had a great parent in a good way, they are your role model, right? So even if this parent was violent, because that's a behavior that you know as a child, you might grow up and actually look for a spouse or a partner that is violent, right? Because that's what you are used to. You know how to handle it. You had to grow up like that, right? It takes strength to cut that, but if there isn't enough help, that's how you find a spouse that's like that. Or you yourself become that spouse. So in terms to your question about gender-based violence, if you grew up in that violence, if one of the ACEs was gender-based violence or divorce or violence in the house, that is what you're accustomed to. So you will repeat what you've seen because that is your normal space as a person. So the next slide. So again, the effects of ACEs. Early adolescence, teenage pregnancies, like we keep seeing, could be definitely a result of that, and especially if there's no fathers in the houses, because girls might tend to look for their father figures and it's not daily issues. They want that paternal space where they feel comfortable, and because they don't know how to say no, they end up falling pregnant very early. So we see a lot of early teenage pregnancy, a lot of alcohol or substance use disorders, because they have to fit somewhere. If we as society see the mothers are the soft parent and the guardian or the role model, or the provider is not there to restrict rules and regulations, these kids will go out and have fun because it's fun, right? Depression, you will find kids going through depression very early on, again because of being hypersensitive and being on an anxious level. Illicit drug use, heart diseases, because again, the stress, right? Toxic stress, liver diseases, again because of substance use disorder. Multiple sexual partners, because there's a gap that they're trying to fill, and it's the neglect gap that they're trying to fill. Intimate partner violence, again, unintended pregnancies, STDs, a lot of smoking, and also suicide attempts, which was something that was mentioned. We have kids at an early age trying to attempt suicide. I work closely with the fire brigade guys, and I get to see and hear their stories that they tell me about. We just rescued somebody in the ocean, or somebody was tried to commit suicide, or somebody died by suicide. It's sad, and it's because there are things that we as a community can try and do by having stakeholder meetings like this, by going out to communities, at churches, at gatherings where we can teach these things, how to regulate emotions differently, because at the end of the day, it's about emotion regulation, right? If we don't have parents, whether be it your mom or your dad, it's about emotion regulation, and this is why we are here. How do we help the next person become the best version of themselves without them causing harm to themselves or the next person? Because to the kids that is around them that they're raising, if they don't know how to be a great person to themselves, it's hard to be a better person to the kids that they're raising. So this is why we need to understand what the root problems are. Next slide. As a society, we end up paying quite a high bill. It's cheaper, and I'll say this with confidence, it's cheaper to host workshops like this than have someone in hospital where we as pay for the bed, for the meals, electricity, the rent of that hospital, or in prison where it's again meals, the bed, the space, facilities. It's cheaper to have stakeholder meetings like this, trainings like this, where you teach someone, and it just takes maybe something that I say or what she said or what you said to help this person to become better. So we pay a big bill as a society. Tax money goes into things that we could try and avoid early on. If we look at the holding cells, the hospital beds, poor school attendance, you have a child repeating grades over and over and over. And it could have just been conversations or trainings like this. Poverty, if the child is continuing to fail because they are not regulated, because they are always anxious and stressed, they might not get the best job, and then that will force them to have sexual relationships, HIV and AIDS. People might be scared to go to the clinic or the hospitals to get ARVs, and. Do we see? So it's much cheaper, but so expensive if we let this go. Mental health challenges. I'm not saying disorder. Challenges, which is anxiety, stress, panic attacks, and so forth, which could lead to other issues as well. Attachment issues that I spoke about. So not having a dad, the next slide, which I think is the last, yeah. So I like this. Basil van der Kolk wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. The body keeps the score. So it's like trauma is not the story of something that happened back then. It is the current imprint of that pain, horror, and fear living inside of people. So yes, I was raped when I was 8. Now I'm 37, but I still remember like it was this morning. You see? So it's not about then, because I was shaped differently from that moment onwards. My life became differently, and I could have hurt people because of that pain that I didn't realize. It takes a conversation like this. It takes your tone as a guardian or a parent, because we are guardians to kids that are not our own, right? And we are parents to kids that are our own. It takes our tone to be different. The kids are looking at us for example. We need to start mimicking that, and we need to start being comfortable with talking to social workers, psychologists, good friends, friends going by the beach, because I live in Soko, but I love going to the beach and just sitting and having a moment, because sometimes it can become overwhelming. I told Selma this one, I'm like, I took leave for like 5 weeks because I was done, I was tired. We need self-care, but you need to start picking up, maybe I'm attracted to this type of person because of this and this that happened to me, or maybe I react like this because of this and this, or I don't know why I react like this. Brilliant. The minute that you have that question, then it's easy to try and find help from someone who's not judgmental. Families could be very judgmental, but somebody who can just listen to your story and hear you and see maybe how they can assist you. So how do we help the child that doesn't have a father? By having stakeholder meetings like this and actually taking it back to our societies, neighborhoods, churches, because everybody goes to church, I'm hoping, or some sort of community gathering, talk about these things. Because now we're here, we know who's who. It's cheaper than having people in the holding cells or prisons for even more. We don't want early deaths because of something we can try and solve. No? So, thank you for listening. Next slide. So you can find me, apart from here today, on, so I'm a mental health advocate, apart from, I'm like big on mental health. So I have a YouTube channel called Makashi. I try and talk about some of these mental health issues, 5-6 minute clips, both in English and then Oshiherero, because I'm Herero, there's some things I feel like I need to say in Oshiherero for my people to understand. If I'm having the same outfit twice, I'm breaking the same topic down. Or Facebook, Paradigm Shift with Mashallah. So you can just, if you have space and time to listen to and share, because I feel like trauma-informed care starts with how many people you can meet. Some people I'll never meet, but they appreciate the information that they get to hear. So there's my email. For those of you who are privileged in Soko, you can always find me in Ministry of Labor. So thank you so much for allowing me to take time.